Hello and welcome back to another episode of What Gets Captured on Film. This is episode 12. I am your host, Dylan Paulson, and if you are new here, this is a show all about movies and movie news. The aim is to give you as much, if not all, of the movie news that you'll need in a week in one convenient podcast. That's pretty much the rundown. This week we'll get into any news that happened between the dates of December 15th and December 21st. And new this week, actually last week, but I'll announce it again on the show, is that I have a Gmail here that if you want to write into the show, I'll read your inquiry on the air and we can have some sort of discussion through the podcast. If you want to tell me I'm wrong, tell me off, ask a question, talk about a movie that you like, or maybe something that I didn't cover in the show. Maybe there's something I missed. All of that, write in. It's free, to just write in. Just email me, whatgetscaptured@gmail.com. And you can write in. I'll read your inquiry on the air and respond to your inquiry live here. So that's that. Again, if you're new here, I'm just going to give a brief little rundown of what this show is. We'll go into some smaller news stories up top. I'll get into what I've watched this past week. And then we can talk about the biggest news stories that happened this week. I'll watch a few trailers and then a wrap-up of... I'll just rattle off some smaller news stories that don't really need any discussion. And then we'll go over what is new in theaters this week. This upcoming weekend, I mean. So right, let's just get into, first things first, let's just get into the box office wrap-up from last week. Number one from last week, no surprise here. I'm sure, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure you know what is the number one movie of this past weekend, Spider-Man No Way Home, $260 million from IMDb Pro, Box Office Mojo. And then a huge gap. And then number two, Disney's Encanto with about $6.5 million. So huge gap there. Obviously, Spider-Man is going to be number one. I don't think that there was any, any inclination otherwise. The marketing for that movie was incredible. I saw it everywhere. And I don't even think that it was just because, I do get a lot of targeted marketing. I get a lot of movie trailers and movie ads that pop up on my various web browsing apps. It's because they're all listening to me when I record this podcast. Are you listening, Google? No, it's just because, that's probably why. And I do a lot of research for the show, so I go to a lot of links, but links to web pages that have different types of movies, entertainment, news. So I do get a lot of that target marketing, but it seemed more than that. I was hearing it on the radio. Seeing some things on Hulu ad-free version or the ad version, Hulu commercials and whatnot. I mean I just saw this movie everywhere. So, and there's that big nostalgia play too. Well, we'll talk about this movie later. I did go and see it, so I'll have something to say about it in a little bit. So let's get through the rest of this wrap up. So number two, Disney's Encanto. Number three, West Side Story with $3.5 million. Just to check in with West Side Story, it's been 2 weeks since it had its major release, and it's up to $18 million, which is, that is such a shame for Steven Spielberg coming back and returning to movies and making a musical, and it's just such a shame. That movie, I don't know what the budget is, but I can only imagine that that's a huge flop. But number four is Ghostbusters Afterlife, staying up there, $3.4 million for a total gross so far of $117 million, which is huge for that movie. That's exactly what they wanted. Number five, Nightmare Alley, which also premiered this past week in half as many theaters, it looks like, as Spider-Man No Way Home, but $2.8 million. So Spider-Man No Way Home, 4,000 theaters, just over 4,000 theaters. That is... huge. That's a huge opening. But to say that Nightmare Alley, 2,000 theaters is nothing to shy at. That 2,000 theaters is there's going to be a theater in your area that's playing the movie. But 4,000 theaters, Spider-Man No Way Home, that's nearly full capacity. That's nearly every theater in America, I would have to imagine. Yep, and then number 7 is this movie I haven't even heard of, but it was new this week. I'm going to look at the IMDb page. This might be a Bollywood pick. It's called Pushpa The Rise, Part 1. $1.3 million. Pretty interesting. Only in 400 theaters, so that's pretty big. But yeah, and then number 8, Eternals. Number 9, Clifford the Big Red Dog. Number 10, Resident Evil. Welcome to Raccoon City. So, Resident Evil, or Clifford the Big Red Dog, we'll go with Eternals first. Number 8, $163 million total so far. Number 9, Clifford the Big Red Dog, $48.5 million. Number 10, Resident Evil, $16.7 million total gross. So that's, year to date since the movie's been released in theaters, what its total gross is. And again, gross is not profit. Gross is how much the movie made. That's not what the production studio is going to take home. But people like the actors and the crew and potentially the director and the writers, they've already been paid. But if an actor in a big movie, such as Spider-Man, has a stake in, this is all contractually obligated to, and it varies so much. But if an actor, say, has a stake in the box office gross, then they'll get a percentage of whatever the profit is after the studio gets paid. So whatever the budget is for a movie, Spider-Man No Way Home, probably $250 million budget, maybe more. On top of that, you're going to have a minimum, $20 million ad campaign. Spider-Man No Way Home probably had $80 to $90 million ad campaign. It was huge. So $260 million. The movie didn't break even yet, but it probably will. So $260 million is amongst a few other records that it broke. There's always some sort of record to be broken, but I think this is worth noting, is that the third biggest opening weekend of all time behind Avengers Endgame and Avengers Infinity War. But that I will say, that is not adjusted for inflation. That is, in real dollars, not nominal dollars. So that is $253 million, but adjusted for inflation, the highest grossing movie of all time is still Gone with the Wind, if it's adjusted for inflation. But when it's not adjusted for inflation, that's when you have these newer movies starting to pop up, like Avatar is still always up there. Star Wars: The Force Awakens. But when you don't adjust for inflation, Gone with the Wind is going to be number one. Probably forever. I doubt. I mean, since 1939, I doubt that movie's going to get pushed away from that spot. But either way, Spider-Man, huge opening. That's all there really is to say about that. Huge opening, third biggest opening weekend of all time, not adjusted for inflation. Cool. So, next little piece of news is that Uncharted got its first movie poster, which is kind of odd because the trailer came out a month ago, and I covered it on this show. I think I actually named an episode after it too. I think it's called Uncharted. But this poster has Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg in the forefront, and then there's some sort of sinking ship in the background. A lot of people are kind of shitting on this trailer and this poster, sorry. And to be honest, I don't really know why. I thought the trailer was, kind of hit or miss. I think the movie could really go either way, but I don't have high hopes for it. But this poster, I don't really see anything wrong with it. We've seen already that Mark Wahlberg doesn't look like Nathan Drake. We know that, and this poster is just kind of reiterating it, but we know that. So at a certain point, that's got to get pushed aside. We know what's coming in the movie. So let's treat it as if it's a new property. I've played Uncharted. I know what Uncharted is. This clearly isn't doing that. So let's just see what we can get out of this. Maybe we can get some sort of entertainment out of it. Tom Holland looks like a young Nathan Drake, and Mark Wahlberg doesn't look like Sully at all, but that's fine. He's Mark Wahlberg. He's not a CG rendered old man with a mustache. He's just not that guy. So that's all I want to say about that. If you don't care about Uncharted, then don't worry about it, because the movie's not going to probably be good. It's probably not going to make that much money. It's probably, people forget about it in a few years. So probably don't worry about it. Based on a video game, the Sony PlayStation quadrilogy of games. It used to be 3, but then there's 4, and then 4, and then a DLC on the 4th one. They're all good, but like real cream of the crop games. But interesting. Well, I'll cover that more as that progresses. We might get another trailer. We might not. Comes out in February 18th, I think. So more on that later. Next up is the Annie Awards. Got their nominations announced. The show is on January 25th, 2022. And the Annie Awards celebrate the best achievements in animation and animation technology. And I'm only going to read the best features for those, which is the highest award. That's the equivalent of the best picture for the Annie Awards. The best feature nominees are Disney's Encanto, Ayuka, Mitchell and the Machines. Mitchell versus the Machines. I hear that's a great movie. Raya and the Last Dragon, and Sing 2. So if you're looking for some sort of family movie this, over Christmas break, and you haven't seen one of these movies, it's probably it. That's probably, either of those you'll probably wind up enjoying with your kids. So that's it. That's all I wanted to bring up at the top of the show. But we still have more news. But before we get into the biggest news stories, I wanted to talk about the things that I've been watching this week. And I will talk about a big movie this week. I've already teased it. But first things first, before I watched a little movie about a spider, I watched a documentary about it was called Billie Eilish, The World's a Little Blurry. And I didn't know what to think about this while I was watching it, because the pacing is odd. It is a little slow, but it made me ask the question to myself, and I don't usually watch documentaries, so this was kind of an exercise, and I don't think I've covered a documentary on the show yet, so this was kind of an exercise in questioning what documentaries' purposes are, right? Because in essence, they're not supposed to be a written story. We're supposed to be, the audience is there along for the ride as the story progresses. But there has to be some sort of entertaining, value proposition, because otherwise we're just going to watch a guy, take money out of an ATM, drive to work, play with the radio, cook dinner. That stuff isn't, if there's no story there along, with that visual, then there's no point in watching the documentary. But so where was I going with this? So this documentary is a little slow, but I still find it interesting. I think it's long. I think it's quite long. And I think it could be a little shorter. And I think that there are certain moments in Billie Eilish's life and career that could have and should have been made out to be more dramatic in the documentary. Not in the sense of like, oh wow, look at, I don't know, like, I don't know, just moments in her life that there could have been more leading up to it, so that when we got to this moment, right, or these moments, that it felt like more of a payoff as opposed to, oh wow, it's just a day, except it's Billie's birthday today. Woo. She's 19. It's not, it's, but, at the same time, I could be thinking to myself, maybe that was the point. Maybe they just wanted it to appear as though it was just the daily life of this girl that also just so happens to be the biggest star in the world. And I think there is definitely something to say about that, we have artists like Kanye West that will put out an album every few years, and they go into the studio for months on end with hundreds of artists and producers that touch this record and hear this record and will contribute, right? But then we have Billie Eilish, who comes out of nowhere a few years ago and dominates the Grammys and the Billboard charts with this record. And we see, through this documentary, we see some of how that record is made, and it is just Billie and her brother Phineas in their bedroom, in their childhood house, just making beats on a computer. And they sing into a microphone on the bed. You know, it's a very intimate sort of recording session, as opposed to, you know, if you ever see a YouTube video or anything of Kanye West just busting into the studio, there's like 40 people there in the studio, and you know, it's just not like that. So that is probably the most interesting part of this whole thing for me, is to see how this girl who has this very intimate, family-oriented life become the biggest star in the world and have to deal with the things that aren't so family-oriented and aren't so intimate, right? Like signing shirts, meeting fans, playing shows where something goes wrong, you know, going to the Grammys, doing interviews. It's very interesting, and I am enjoying the amount of media that is coming out, or that centers around artists, or just, you know, entertainers in general, artists, actors, whoever, famous people, because I'm enjoying hearing their stories. Because up until recently, we didn't really have a good representation of what it was like to be famous and how difficult that is, and especially to be famous at such a young age. And I think that that's novel to have that representation somewhere, because now you'll see almost everyone has some sort of output, right? You know, that's a hyperbole, but see how many people are famous on TikTok and Instagram influencers, and everyone has a podcast that they like to listen to. You should recommend this one. And, you know, we just have so many creators, so many YouTubers, you know, Let's Players, you know, everyone knows someone that is famous to them. And to have some sort of relatable media that is, you know, easily attainable, not obtainable. It is easily attainable and relatable, I think I might have said that already, is novel and useful for these, you know, because we have, you know, 2, 3, 4 times as many famous people as we did, you know, in our societal culture or whatever. I'm kind of talking, you know, this is all like a little philosophical of a conversation to have around this documentary, but I think it's warranted. And I just think that that's really all I have to say about it. I mean, you can tell I'm thinking about this movie a lot after I watched it, and the necessity that it was made in, or how necessary it is to have been made. But other than that, you know, the only negative thing I can really say is that I think it wasn't paced very well, and I think the end is a little anticlimactic. It's like, ooh, and then it just kind of ends. Yeah. So that's it. Pacing a little odd, but yeah. If you're interested in Billie Eilish, or you're interested in artists, or you're interested in music production, or if you just like a good documentary, I think it's worth it. I watched this on Apple TV Plus. I have I got a new phone recently, a few months ago, and it came with 6 free months of Apple TV Plus. So I'm still riding that wave. So yeah. So, okay, that's it for that one. The next one, this little movie about a spider, Spider-Man No Way Home. I watched it last night in the theater. I had a good crowd. Theater wasn't fully packed, but I had a good crowd, a very responsive crowd, which was nice. I hate going to the theater when, you know, there's like 4 other people there and, you know, the jokes just kind of fall flat. People are coughing or people are on their phones, and it just wasn't like that. It was a good theater, good amount of people, good crowd. The movie, I am so torn on how I feel about this. And I can't necessarily make anyone happy with whatever I'm going to say about this movie. So I'm just not going to try to make people happy. I'm just going to say what I think about it. And what I think about it is that point blank, when I walked out of the theater, I really liked it. And, but as I walked away and thought about it more, the less and less I liked it. And I think there's a very good reason for that. The movie, and this is spoiler free, by the way, I'm not going to spoil anything just yet. If I feel the need during this conversation to spoil something, I will announce it very clearly and give you plenty of time to leave. This is a spoiler free review. But the movie preys on nostalgia. You know, you can see in the trailer there are some familiar villains that are back, right? So, and I think that seeing those familiar characters made me feel happily nostalgic for films I have seen in the past. But I think that as I walked away from the film, I realized that nothing there was warranted. And none of those characters coming back was really, really contributed emotionally to Tom Holland's growth as Peter Parker. Because the movie comes off of Far From Home, which I didn't even see, by the way, disclaimer, but I don't think it's necessary. In that, at the end of the movie, his identity is revealed. So he, wants to feel like a kid again and can't relate to a lot of people. And having a good villain, right, is supposed to be the opposite of whatever the main character is. So that when the hero is battling the villain, or the protagonist is battling the antagonist, physically or emotionally battling the antagonist, whatever flaws the protagonist has that they are trying to overcome, they see those flaws within the antagonist. The antagonist is supposed to be what the hero could turn into if those flaws, grow into full character traits. And you can point that out with any movie. It doesn't have to be superhero movies. Any movie is, that's what a good protagonist-antagonist battle looks like. It's that emotional dichotomy, right? Tom Holland here, well, first of all, there's no real one main villain. There's a myriad of a few familiar villains. And they each have their own, emotional journey that they're on, right? And we've seen it before in these other movies, right? We've seen what Doc Ock has gone through and the Green Goblin. And they're all still on those journeys. They're stuck in those journeys, right? And those journeys were reflections of other characters. Doc Ock from Spider-Man 2 was a reflection of Peter Parker back then. Green Goblin was a reflection of Peter Parker back then. So when you have these characters that come in to Tom Holland's, Spider-Man universe, and they're on a different emotional journey than Tom Holland is on, it feels really out of place. But if it's possible for me personally to turn off my brain that says, think critically about this. What is the writing doing here? What is the directing doing here? Are these characters warranted? Blah, blah, blah. If I turn that off and I just watch Doc Ock and Green Goblin and I just Alfred Molina, Willem Dafoe, if I just watch them and feel like I was a kid watching Spider-Man 1 and 2 in the theaters again as a kid. I remember seeing both of those movies in the theater. Then that nostalgic wave kind of washes over me and I feel like a kid again. And that feeling is, not something that comes from any movie, right? That is very special and very unique. And it's only something that could have been pulled off over years of time, right? I think about my favorite movie of all time is Boyhood, right? And even though that's only one movie, because it was filmed over years, you almost feel nostalgic for the beginning of the movie by the time you get to the end of the movie. And this movie, in a similar kind of way, preys on nostalgia. It's like, oh, remember this line from that movie you really liked? Remember this character? Remember this plot point from this movie that you really liked a long time ago when you were a kid? Remember that? And although it's cool and it does make you feel happy, it makes you feel like a kid. The crowd was, cheering and responsive to these lines and these action sequences with these characters. It felt good to watch the movie in the moment. A lot of the character development and the emotion just didn't line up, and it just didn't match. And there's not so much exploration, right, with these villains, because you have so many of them, so it's so difficult to get into any one. And this movie is just like any other, big Marvel movie in that it doesn't expect the audience, it does expect the audience to have the knowledge of the films that came before it. And I had a very similar experience watching this movie than I did to watching the Avengers, the first Avengers, the first time before I had seen the other lead-up movies. I was like, wait, who is this character? Who are they referencing? Am I supposed to be understanding this? And then at a certain point, an hour or two into the movie, you just kind of forget about, you just kind of like, whatever, I'll just, And then the plot just kind of doesn't even matter because they're referencing things that you don't know if you're supposed to know or not. Am I supposed to be following this? And then you kind of turn your brain off and you're like, oh, okay. But the thing here is that it's okay. It's okay for the Avengers to do that, for Joss Whedon to have done that then, and for Avengers Endgame and Infinity War to do that with 20 other something movies with leading up, when they all had their own individual characters and plot points and yada yada. That's okay, because all of those, to be honest, I don't think it's okay. I think it's a total sham, and I think it's a way to get money. And they did it, and they won, whatever. But the reason why audiences accepted it was because those movies all came out 3 months after each other. 3 months, another movie. 3 months, another movie. 3 months, another movie. Another reason for another person to get back in the seats, right? And see the next Marvel movie. See the next movie in the MCU, Ant-Man's coming out. What else is there? I don't even know. Captain Marvel's coming out. The new Avengers. Captain America, Civil War's coming out. Another reason to get back in the theater. So those movies, those 20-something movies in the lead up to Infinity War and Endgame are all in the collective minds of the audience. But the thing is, with No Way Home, the Spider-Man movies that this movie is referencing and has the characters of, the Alfred Molina, Willem Dafoe, those movies came out in 2001 and 2004, I think. So it's been a while since those movies were in the collective, mindset of the audience. So even though I've seen those movies, especially Spider-Man 1 and 2, Spider-Man 3 I've seen a few, less times, but Spider-Man 1 and 2 I've seen dozens of times. No exaggeration, dozens of times. I wore out the VHS tape. I put scratches on the DVD because I manhandled it too much. I've seen these movies so many times. And there were even times when I was like pausing at a line and I was like, am I supposed to remember what that's in reference to? So just my question is, and this is a rhetorical question, is that who is this movie made for? Because I'm the age, right, that grew up with the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, right? And I remember them, as well as I thought as well as I could have remembered them. I watched Spider-Man 1 and 2 probably earlier this year even. And there were lines that I'm like, what is that in reference to? And I have anyone that knows me personally will tell you I have a great memory. So who is this movie made for if I'm the person that doesn't understand what Alfred Molina is referencing? You know, I understand the power of the sun is in the palm of my hands. I understand, I'm something of a scientist myself. But there are certain things when I'm like, wait, what? Am I supposed to remember that? Pause. Am I supposed to remember that? And it doesn't matter if I wound up being like, oh yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, I do remember that. Or yeah, that does ring a bell. Maybe he did say that. Maybe that is a plot point. It doesn't matter because that brief moment that I was like, wait, is that for me? Completely took me out of the movie. And it completely broke any sense of believing that I had in this world of multiverses. Completely took me out for, even if it's a split second, that is a missed opportunity to have your audience engage with the film. These movies, Marvel and Sony in this case as well, churn these movies out like clockwork. Hundreds of $1 million into these huge budget movies. And they don't even really understand who the audience is. And the script is kind of a mess. And, there is a point in the movie in which Tom Holland goes through an emotional change for the worse, let's say. If you're watching the movie, you know what I'm talking about. And that scene is done horribly. Poorly, incredibly poorly. It's sloppy. This is Marvel. This is supposed to be the cream of the crop of big budget studios. This is it. This is what, attracts millions of audiences. Is this sloppy script work? Is this, not to say any of the poor performances were bad, because none of them were, I don't think. Well, there is one notable performance in this movie that is way off, I think. But I'm not going to talk about that because it would vastly spoil the movie. But yeah, there's definitely one performance that's way off, and it almost makes me think. So when you try and do something like this, some sort of big nostalgic piece, and it winds up missing the mark, then that nostalgia that you aimed to achieve almost kind of tarnishes the original work. And Spider-Man No Way Home almost got there for me, where it almost made me think negatively about the Raimi movies that I love so much, the holy grail of Spider-Man trilogy films. Almost made me get there, where I was like, wow, is this what, Alfred Molina, is this really what I remember? And no, it's not. It's just because the writing was a little sloppy. And not to say anything bad about the writers, because I don't, know them personally, but I've been following their career for years. They're writers that were on Community, staff writers on Community for years, up through season 5. And so I like their work. This isn't anything bad about them as people. It's just they were probably on a budget, or not a budget. They were probably on a huge time crunch to get this $100 million plus movie off the ground. And once you start production, you can't just stop to, try and figure out what, how would this script work? And you can't workshop it, because once the production's moving, it is a train and it is going. It is on the tracks. It has left the station. It is gone. And they that's probably it, is they probably had a time crunch and couldn't figure out some of these finer details, which is a shame, because I think they really could have had something really, really special. But instead, what I think we ultimately wound up getting, so here's like my That was just a big ramble of a bunch of thoughts. But here's ultimately what I wound up thinking about this movie, and now I'm 24 hours removed from seeing it, is that the movie is enjoyable to watch if you turn your brain off and just want to feel nostalgic about some Spider-Man movies, right? But if you go into it like I did with any sort of hope that there's going to be some sort of warranted character growth, character development, like there was in the Raimi movies, like there is in the Spider-Verse film, this is not it. And that's pretty much all I have to say about that. So ultimately, what did I think about it? Good. Really good, even. I really enjoyed it. But is it, an Oscar-winning, higher-tier film that, is gonna... I hate saying, gonna win awards, I hate equating, that only Oscar movies can be good. Because it's not true. But is this a movie that pushes the medium that, that is, the best script of the year, pushes what a script can be, what a film can be, the emotions that it can draw from you? Not really. Not really. No, there are other movies that have made me feel nostalgic that have done it better. There are other movies that have made me happy that have done it better, made me sad that have done it better. There are other superhero movies that have done, maybe not this, but done character development better. So, what do I think about it? I think it's incredibly, incredibly overhyped. I think the marketing budget did wonders for this film. But ultimately, I think the marketing was too much. And if there was a little less marketing, a little less hype, that I would have gone in and maybe enjoyed it a little more because my expectations would have been a little lower. I didn't even talk about Benedict Cumberbatch in this movie. He's fine. It's fine. But just knowing some things that I know coming out of the previous Avengers movies about him and his strength as a character and how he is his will as a person, I just don't. Some of the decisions that Doctor Strange is making in this film, I'm just not following. And I think that's kind of what you walk into when you have so many movies about so many characters, is that a lot of intricate little things get lost in the mix. Why is this character making this decision if he didn't make a decision that, in that other movie? Because I know him as this type of character, but in this movie he's being this type of character. It doesn't make sense. In film, we have rules about, you only have so limited time to tell a story and to garner emotions. And this movie had 20 plus years to garner emotions. And I think that it was a missed opportunity when I really think about it. But if I don't think about it that much, I wind up enjoying it a little more. So maybe you just don't think about it. Okay, that's that. I rambled a lot. Let's get into the news. Other than that, I've been watching Seinfeld and Ozark. It's not even really worth talking about. I only watched one episode of Ozark, so that's it. Let's get into the news. Really not a lot to talk about. It's such a slow news week, so just a few trailers we got to get through. So let's do that first. So, okay, number one, biggest story of the week, most likely, is upcoming film The Northman from critically acclaimed and beloved new director Robert Eggers released its first trailer this week via Focus Features' official YouTube channel. According to the video's description, the film is, quote, an action-filled epic that follows a young Viking prince on his quest to avenge his father's murder, end quote. The film stars Alexander Skarsgård, Nicole Kidman, Claes Bang, not sure if I pronounced that name correctly, Anya Taylor-Joy, Ethan Hawke, Bjork, and Willem Dafoe. Robert Eggers is directing the film and co-writing it alongside up-and-coming Icelandic writer Sjón, who is known for writing Lamb, which premiered earlier this year. Eggers is known for writing and directing The Witch and The Lighthouse, two indie psychological horror films that have garnered small but strong followings. The Northman will premiere in theaters on April 22nd, 2022. This was definitely a big story, and a lot of people were pointing this out to me, and seems cool. I haven't seen it yet, so, I'll pause this, give you my thoughts, and I'll be right back. The movie seems really interesting. So, right off the bat, I'm not too drawn into the story. Not for any other reason other than it's just been done before. It's a revenge tale. But the reason why a lot of people keep doing revenge tales is because there can be a lot of emotion involved with them. You see something happen at the beginning, and by the end, you see that action get resurrected or avenged in this case. So, whatever actions the character has to take is easily warranted because you saw, the death of X or whatever you saw, something like that at the beginning. So a revenge tale is always has a lot of emotions in. But I'm not, nothing draws me in beyond that of being like, wow, what a unique story, because it's not. It's just an interesting, time period for most people. It's hard for me to get into, I don't know what time period this is. I'm not some sort of history buff, some sort of world cultures history buff, but it seems like, I don't know. I can't even put a year to it. I can't even put it. It's just, the production design looks interesting, but this type of film is kind of difficult for me to grasp onto. But I will say I watched, Robert Eggers. He's great. From what I only saw The Witch. He also did The Lighthouse with Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. Loved The Witch. That was one of Anya Taylor-Joy's first movies, if not her first film. It's like a slow burn horror film that takes place in what I think is like 1600s America. People are just, doing their farm thing and stuff. And that movie is pretty dark, pretty, it was an interesting watch for sure. But I've heard The Lighthouse is great. It's on Amazon. It's on my short list of films that I want to watch soon. And to be honest, it looks cool. There was a moment in the trailer when there's like a spear that's coming at the main character, and he grabs it out of the air and just throws it right back at the sender. That had my jaw drop. So pretty interesting. So, that's really all I can say is that the story doesn't seem too unique. Revenge tale. Time period could be interesting. And that's pretty much it. Looking forward to it. Robert Eggers is great. A lot of people can get excited about, I don't know, someone's name. But all I wanted to say is that someone's name doesn't really mean the movie's going to be good. It just, people can get excited about a name. I get excited about a name, but, Eggers could be cool. So, that's all I can really say about that until we have more. But, that's it. So, number 2, this was also a pretty big story. Denis Villeneuve has his eyes set on his next venture. The Hollywood Reporter reports that the visionary director will tackle Rendezvous with Rama, the 1973 British sci-fi novel from Arthur C. Clarke, about a massive cylindrical alien starship that enters our galaxy in the 2130s. The film will be produced by Alcon Entertainment, which helped finance Prisoners and Blade Runner 2049. Morgan Freeman and Laurie McCreary will also produce, as they have held the rights to the novel since the early 2000s. No cast, co-writer, production start date, or release date has been announced at this time. However, we can assume if Dune Part 2 releases as planned on October 23rd, 2023, we likely won't see this film for another 18 months to 2 years after that. We will keep you updated as this story progresses. And that was it. Denis Villeneuve, according to the Hollywood Reporter, is interested in working with Alcon Entertainment again in adapting Rendezvous with Rama, which is, another sci-fi novel, another very well-revered sci-fi novel. I think Villeneuve likes the space that he's in. I think that it's kind of a safe pick for him to do another novel. But this book, from what I was reading of it, I haven't read the book, seems pretty similar to what, the story that he was doing with Arrival, although Arrival was just incredibly unique. So I don't know. I just, with a lot of visionary directors like Villeneuve, and Nolan is another one that I think they pick their movies based around what they think they can do visually interesting. So this book, Rendezvous with Rama, is about, like I said in the story, this huge cylindrical alien ship that enters the galaxy. And there are images online of what artists' renderings of what this thing could look like, or would look like based on descriptions in the novel. And I think that this, like a visual representation of this on film would look crazy cool. And that's what excited me the most about this announcement. And that's all I wanted to say. That's it. It's really all I can say about that. Interested to learn more about the cast and the production start date, who's writing it, probably Villeneuve, but, etc. We'll update as that progresses. So, number 3. Paramount Pictures released a new trailer for the upcoming action comedy The Lost City this week via their official YouTube channel. The video's lengthy description describes the film in detail. Quote, "Brilliant but reclusive author Loretta Sage has spent her career writing about exotic places in her popular romance adventure novels featuring handsome cover model Alan, who has dedicated his life to embodying the hero character Dash. While on tour promoting her new book with Alan, Loretta is kidnapped by an eccentric billionaire who hopes that she can lead him to the ancient lost city's treasures from her latest story. Wanting to prove that he can be a hero in real life and not just on the pages of her books, Alan sets off to rescue her. Thrust into an epic jungle adventure, the unlikely pair will need to work together to survive the elements and find the ancient treasure before it's lost forever." End quote. The film stars Sandra Bullock, Brad Pitt, Daniel Radcliffe, and Channing Tatum. The film was written and directed by Aaron and Adam Nee, relatively unknown professionals, and is co-written by Oren Uziel, who is known for writing films such as 22 Jump Street, The Cloverfield Paradox, and Mortal Kombat. Expect the film in theaters on March 22nd, 2022. Same thing, haven't seen this one yet. Interesting cast. I love Daniel Radcliffe. So I will be right back. That trailer was a complete mixed bag, and I have no idea how to feel about it. I don't even know. It started with this very interesting visual representation of how an artist writes a novel. I thought that could be its own really interesting movie in itself. I don't know. I don't really know what to think about it. The cast looks great. I just feel like it's going to be like a big budget comedy that has way too many jokes that go on for too long. So yeah, that's my hope, is that, keep the bits short, keep the laughs coming. These people, all these actors are great, and they're all really funny and talented. So let's hope that can stay. But I don't know. Interesting release date, March 22nd. They're going for a late spring, early spring release. So we'll see if that can hit. All right, that's it. Moving on. Number 4, Amazon released the first trailer for a new romantic comedy, I Want You Back. The film is about Charlie Day and Jenny Slate that portray characters who, quote, thought they were on the precipice of life's biggest moments, marriage, kids, and houses in the suburbs, until their respective partners dumped them. Horrified to learn that the loves of their lives have already moved on, Peter and Emma hatch a hilarious plan to win back their exes and with unexpected results, end quote. The film is written by Isaac Aptaker and Elizabeth Berger, who are both known for being series writers for shows including Grandfathered and This Is Us. The film was directed by Jason Orley, who recently helmed the Hulu original Pete Davidson starring film Big Time Adolescence. Charlie Day and Jenny Slate are two heavy-hitting comedy stars. Day, known for writing, producing, and acting in the long-running FX comedy It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and Slate, known for roles in film and TV such as Obvious Child, Zootopia, The Secret Life of Pets, and as Mona Lisa Saperstein in the beloved NBC sitcom Parks and Recreation. I Want You Back is slated for release on Amazon Prime at the date February 11th, 2022. Again, same deal. Haven't seen this trailer yet, so interested to watch it. I love both Charlie Day and Jenny Slate, so I'll be right back. Again, not really sure what to think about that one either. Like I said, Charlie Day, Jenny Slate could be great. with their chemistry together, the comedic chemistry. But if that with these type of buddy comedy movies, if their chemistry isn't, top tier, top notch, and the whole movie's going to fall flat. Because that's what the movie rides on. It's not, you don't watch this movie for some sort of great or character growth, character development, although it's nice, and that definitely takes the movie to the next level, some sort of top tier, upper level, romantic comedy. But, I'm not necessarily seeing that here, upper level romantic comedy, but it could be, I don't know. This Is Us writers could be, could be great. Even this movie could, come out and surprise everyone and be some sort of, February 11th is the date. It could be some sort of, hit end of winter, streaming movie. This could come out of nowhere and be great. So, but I don't know. I'm not seeing anything that makes it seem like this movie is going to be spectacular. And if there was something in the movie that made it seem like it was going to be spectacular and be this hit film, they should have advertised it in the trailer. I think that's probably all we'll see of the movie until it comes out. Maybe, some other short bits and pieces of trailers, commercials, and whatever. But I think that's pretty much all we'll see about it. So, when it comes out, and unless there's some sort of marketing around it, I probably won't see it. Even though it's on Amazon, I probably, there are movies on Amazon that I still want to see that I haven't seen. So, that are out now. So yeah, that's that. Even though I love Charlie Day and Jenny Slate, like I've said multiple times already. So yeah, that's it. That's all the big news stories that deserved any sort of big sort of fanfare, writing stories about them, open-ended discussion. So now this part of the show is just we rattle off some lower level news stories that are worth mentioning, but not necessarily worth discussing. So here we go. Variety reports that Ben Schwartz joins Nicholas Hoult and Nicolas Cage in Universal's Renfield. Deadline reports that an upcoming crime drama, Alone Today, will star Danny Trejo, Shannon Elizabeth, and Frank Whaley. Deadline reports that Shaylee Rose, Pete Plazchek, and Heather Morris are set to star in indie drama The Bodyguard. Deadline reports that producer Freddie Wexler bought the life rights of Keith Adams, the coach of an all-deaf football team that competed in the California State Championship. HBO announces the date that Steven Soderbergh's upcoming Killer Kimmy will stream on HBO Max, February 10th. Deadline reports that upcoming Regina King-helmed film Shirley will go to Netflix as it adds Lance Reddick, Lucas Hedges, Andre Holland, Terrence Howard, Christina Jackson, Michael Cherry, Dorian Missick, Myra Van, W. Earl Brown, and Ethan Jones Romero to its cast. Deadline reports that Lyle Lyle Crocodile film adds Scoot McNairy to its cast of Javier Bardem and Constance Wu. Deadline reports that Canadian hockey player Jordan Tutu is getting his own documentary titled Tutu in 2022. That's a tongue twister. Deadline reports that Netflix's Rustin adds Jeffrey Wright and Grantham Coleman to its cast. Deadline reports that upcoming comedy The Other Zoe adds Andy McDowell, Heather Graham, and Patrick Fabian to its cast. Sony Pictures announced the release date for upcoming Roger Mitchell film The Duke as March 25th, 2022. Deadline reports that Apple is developing a documentary exploring the history of James Bond original music for the films. Deadline reports that Daisy Ridley is set to star and produce in indie film Sometimes I Think About Dying with Richard Lambert directing. Deadline reports that 1917 writer-director Sam Mendes is working on a new film with Colin Firth, Toby Jones, Crystal Clark, Tanya Moody, Olivia Colman, and Michael Ward called Empire of Light. That would have been a story, but there's just nothing else really to talk about. There's no synopsis of the film or anything like that. There's just really nothing to talk about there. Deadline reports that Suge Knight's life rights have been acquired to make a motion picture with Nick Cassavetes and Anthony Thorne writing the script. And that is all the news. So, with that being said, let's get into the movies that are coming to theaters this weekend. The first big movie is The Matrix Resurrections. Return to a world of two realities, one everyday life, the other what lies behind it. To find out if his reality is a construct, to truly know himself, Mr. Anderson will have to choose to follow the White Rabbit once more. Directed by Lena Wachowski, starring Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, Yahya Abdul II, and Jonathan Groff. Next up, The King's Man. This movie has a huge marketing budget too. In the early years of the 20th century, the Kingsman Agency is forced to stand against the cabal plotting a war to wipe out millions. Directed by Matthew Vaughn, starring Ralph Fiennes, Gemma Arterton, Rhys Ifans, and Harris Dickinson. Next up, The Tragedy of Macbeth. Not a lot of fanfare for this movie, even though the director is quite well known. A Scottish lord becomes convinced by a trio of witches that he will become the next king of Scotland, and his ambitious wife supports him in his plans of seizing power. Directed by Joel Cohen, starring Denzel Washington, Frances McDormand, Alex Hassel, and Bertie Carvel. Next up, Sing 2. Buster Moon and his friends must persuade reclusive rock star Clay Calloway to join them for the opening of a new show. Directed by Garth Jennings, starring Matthew McConaughey, Reese Witherspoon, Scarlett Johansson, and Tori Kelly. A Journal for Jordan. First Sergeant Charles Monroe King, before he is killed in action in Baghdad, authors a journal for his son intended to tell him how to live a decent life despite growing up without a father. Directed by Denzel Washington, starring Michael B. Jordan, Tamara Tooney, Chante Adams, and Robert Wisdom. I thought I read that name wrong, but it is Wisdom. American Underdog, the story of NFL MVP and Hall of Fame quarterback Kurt Warner, who went from stocking shelves at a supermarket to becoming an American football star. Directed by Andrew Irwin and John Irwin, starring Zachary Levi, Anna Paquin, Hayden Zoller, and a name I can't pronounce, so I won't try butchering it. So that's all the movies coming to theaters, but there were also two big movies coming to streaming this week. One is out today. The other is out on Christmas Eve. Excuse me. Don't Look Up comes to Netflix on Christmas Eve. Two low-level astronomers must go on a giant media tour to warn mankind of an approaching comet that will destroy planet Earth. Directed by Adam McKay, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence, Meryl Streep, Kate Blanchett, and Jonah Hill. Sorry, Cat Blanchett. What am I doing? And next up, this one comes out today. If I had more time before the show, I usually like to record the show early in the day, but otherwise I would have watched it. Being the Ricardos is out today on Amazon Prime. Follows Lucy and Desi as they face a crisis that could end their careers and another that could end their marriage. Directed by Aaron Sorkin, starring Nicole Kidman, Javier Bardem, Nina Ariadna, and J.K. Simmons. And that is everything I have for you this week. So what recommendation could I give for you to watch? I don't know. I don't know anything about the Tragedy of Macbeth. I haven't heard anything about it. I haven't seen anything about it. Probably a trailer came out that I totally missed, which I feel really bad about. I've been trying to cover as many things as possible. The King's Man seems interesting. Matrix Resurrections, reviews came out today. I think it has like a 65 on Metacritic. Not too bad. Could be good for some, some family fun. Not for the kids, but, some fun if you want to watch a movie over Christmas. Don't Look Up is definitely the film to look out for on Netflix. That movie's going to be huge. Being the Ricardos, I'm surprised there wasn't too much fanfare. I didn't even know it came out until I looked it up. I was like, wait, isn't that movie coming soon? And it is. It came out today. So yeah, I'm going to, hopefully for next week, I'll have seen Don't Look Up and Being the Ricardos. And I'm probably not going to go to the theaters this week, so no Matrix for you or The Tragedy of Macbeth. Even A Journal for Jordan had a something come out recently that I thought looked interesting. But yeah, no, that's it. That's it for me. That's it for the show. The world's being crazy out there with COVID and the Omicron, and hope everyone's just staying safe out there. Stay safe for Christmas. Hope everyone can have some, nice, safe holiday time with their loved ones. So, that's it for me. I'm Dylan Paulson. This was What Gets Captured on Film. If you heard anything during the show that I was either wrong about or you want to tell me off about or write in a question or whatever you want, email whatgetscaptured@gmail.com. I will answer your inquiry on the show. So, yeah, that's it for me. Thanks very much. Stay safe. I think this is the last episode before Christmas, so, Merry Christmas. And, happy holidays. Take it easy, guys.